Flipkart is getting into hotels. Welcome to Backstage with Millionaires. I'm Caleb, your host, and I think the most important question that we need to ask here right off the bat is why? So 2022 saw a huge surge in demand, both in the domestic and international accommodation markets. And going a little bit more macro here, the travel industry as a whole saw a 70% growth just in the last quarter compared to the annual growth rate of 60% over the last 2 years. Here's a quote from the senior vice president of Flipkart. Flipkart Flight is on a steady path of growth in the travel industry since we entered this space. With Flipkart Hotels, we are strengthening our commitment to provide a better experience and superior service to our customers across metros and beyond tiers. So this statement makes it pretty clear that Flipkart Hotels is going to be an extension of Flipkart's already existing travel supply chain, which includes companies like Flipkart Flights, which is a flight booking service launched in 2018, and a hotel booking space company, ClearTrip, which was acquired by Flipkart in 2021. The Indian travel and tourism market is projected to clock revenues of approximately $15 billion by the end of 2022, with that number estimated to grow to $29.01 billion by 2026 at an annual growth rate of 18.08%. Now, what's interesting here about Flipkart Hotels specifically is that they're going to be letting their users access this new offering on the main Flipkart app. And Flipkart already has millions of monthly active users, so this should give them a nice competitive edge against incumbents like Oyo, Airbnb, and Booking.com. And let's also keep in mind here that a lot of travel and hospitality companies are already feeling financially exhausted because the COVID-19 pandemic ended up lasting a lot longer than many of these companies thought that it would. Flipkart, on the other hand, saw a ton of growth during the COVID-19 pandemic as people's shopping habits went online. And they're also owned by Walmart, so they basically have unlimited money to acquire more and more market share from incumbents in this travel and hospitality market. Now, in the near term, Flipkart Hotels is going to list approximately 300,000 domestic and international hotels, and that number in the long term is likely going to increase. All right, next up in the news, Unacademy is launching something that they're calling Unacademy One, which isn't a platform. It's also not a product. It's a collection of 50 YouTube channels. Now, just to be clear here, these are 50 brand new YouTube channels. So they're not repurposing or rebranding or adding a fresh coat of paint to old YouTube channels. And it's not really clear at this point what's going to happen to their old YouTube channels, if they're going to keep posting content on them, or if they're just going to leave them and they're slowly going to languish, or if they're going to be deleting those old channels. It's really not clear at this point. But this is the first time that Unacademy is really making this kind of massive push. And it's happening back on YouTube, which of course, YouTube was Unacademy's roots. That's where they started as a company all those years ago. So it looks like a lot of the content that's going to be going onto these new channels will be very similar to the content that they've been posting previously, like for example, test preparation content, but there will also be some new categories too, like taxation, student life, inspiring stories from learners, top rankers, and more. Now, in the recent past, a lot of the expansion that Unacademy has done on the YouTube platform has just been to acquire other content creator channels, other educators who are making interesting videos that are getting a lot of traction, and then they just expect those content creators to put links and promo codes, bringing learners to the Unacademy app. Now though, with Unacademy One, it looks like Unacademy is trying to reduce the influence that these content creators, these educators, have over the Unacademy brand by instead bringing all of their content under one umbrella. So this does look like a bit of a pivot in strategy for Unacademy. They recently hired a bunch of Allen's top teachers in Kota and other student hubs, and I think they're realizing that this isn't really a secure or safe position to be in because the situation could easily be reversed in the next couple of years if other education companies make those teachers even better offers, and so those teachers end up leaving Unacademy to go work for other companies. Unacademy One isn't going to be relying on the brand names of content creators or the images or names of educators. It's all going to be happening under the Unacademy brand name. And so educators will come and go, but Unacademy will stay the same. And I think that's what Unacademy is trying to do here. All right, next up, let's move into our bird's eye segment now, because at least 16 Indian startups have raised more than $1 million this week, and collectively, the entire Indian startup ecosystem has raised $180 million. So starting things off, we have fintech startups raising 24% of all the funds this week. That's $44.2 million. And the leaders here were Bengaluru-based gold loan startup Rupeek, which raised $16 million, and Gurugram-based fintech marketplace Gromo, which raised $11 million. After fintech, we have Gurugram-based online pharmacy Tata Tata 1mg. They raised 22% of all the funds this week. That's $40 million. And in the process became a unicorn as well. Next, we have one company in the clean tech space. Reliance owned California and Bengaluru-based clean tech company SenseHawk. They've raised 17% of all the funds this week. That's $32 million. And then finally, we have one company in the infratech sector, Bengaluru-based iBus Networks. They've raised 8% of all the funds this week. That's $15.65 million. So as you can see here, this week hasn't been huge when it comes to Indian startup fundraising. $195 million is just 10% more than what they raised last week, $178 million. But the number could go up by the end of the week when you're watching this video. So if you want more up-to-date information on Indian fundraising, what's happening in the ecosystem when it comes to raising funds from investors, then be sure to sign up for our newsletter. You can find a link to that in the description down below. Last week, we did run into a bit of a snag, and so we weren't able to send the newsletter out, but rest assured, moving forward, every week we will send that newsletter out on Sundays. All right, next up, just a couple of quick updates for you guys. First of all, like I said in the Bird's Eye segment, Tata 1mg is now a unicorn, valued at $1.09 billion. With this investment, Tata Digital now has 3 unicorns under its belt: Big Basket, CultFit, and Tata 1mg. All right, next up, it looks like Ola Electric sales are continuing to decline. Their registrations have fallen by 11.2% in August of 2022, despite the fact that the overall Indian EV two-wheeler market is seeing steady growth of 13% month on month. All right, next up, as you've probably heard, it's been a bit of a difficult week for Bengaluru. To give you guys some numbers here, the Outer Ring Road Companies Association, which represents startups and corporate businesses on Outer Ring Road in Bengaluru, has a combined revenue of $22 billion and employs over 10 lakh people. And they said that the flooding on August 30th specifically led to a loss of about $28.2 million collectively, as employees were stuck on the road for over 5 hours. You've also got a lot of startup founders, the people who are in charge of these companies, who are employing all of these people, being affected by this flooding as well, including Unacademy's Gaurav Munjal, who took to Twitter to say that his family was being evacuated from their society via tractor. So I'll wrap this video up with a little update from our side. Nothing important, but just to thank you guys for sticking around until the end of the video. So on Monday, I did go into the office, our brand new office, which we're so excited to have, and got faced with this flooding that some people faced. It wasn't a citywide thing. I know when you look online, you see, especially people outside of Bengaluru, it looks like the apocalypse. The entire city is underwater. That's not the case. It's just a couple of stretches on Sarjapur Road and also Outer Ring Road that were affected. But of course, a lot of employees go through these areas, myself included. I was on my way. I wasn't negatively affected in any major way, just got my shoes wet, nothing more than that. People like Gaurav actually had to evacuate, so that's pretty serious, but luckily the flooding seems to have subsided for now, and I'm really excited to get back into the office next week because I ended up deciding to work from home for most of the week because of the flooding. All right, that is all the startup news that I have for you guys this week. I really hope that you enjoyed the video and that you learned a lot from it. Big thanks now to all of our Backstage with Millionaires members, our unicorns, our decacorns, and our hectacorns. And of course, also big thanks to this week's sponsor, Amazon India. All right, I will see you in the next one.